Warm welcome, audience. What's time there from where you're watching it? Morning, afternoon, or night? Let's step into the mysterious world of the Middle Ages. A world where fear and wonder lived side by side, where people dreamed of miracles even while they struggled through hunger, wars, and plagues. Among those dreams was alchemy, the strange art that promised to turn ordinary things into treasures and to stretch the limits of human life itself. For many, it sounded like forbidden magic, but for those who practiced it, alchemy was a path of discovery, a way to unlock secrets hidden in nature by God. They believed the world was full of mysteries waiting to be revealed, gold waiting to be created, illnesses waiting to be cured, and perhaps even death waiting to be defeated. In this age, alchemists were not common men. They worked in secrecy, often in lonely rooms lit only by candles, where the air was thick with smoke and the walls were stacked with jars and books. Strange tools covered their tables, glass flasks, bubbling pots, powders in many colors, and scrolls written with symbols no ordinary person could understand. To the villagers who heard whispers of such places, alchemists seemed like sorcerers who dealt with forces too dangerous to touch. But to kings and lords, they were men worth keeping close because if their promises were real, the reward would be endless, gold to fill treasuries and a potion to defeat sickness and age. Yet alchemy was never only about riches. True alchemists believed that metals had souls just like humans, that base metals like lead were imperfect and could grow into something pure and perfect gold if given the right care. To them, the transformation of metals was a mirror of the human journey, for just as lead could become gold, the human soul could be purified and brought closer to the divine. The Philosopher's Stone, the greatest dream of all, was thought to be the key to this transformation, a substance able to change both matter and spirit. Some even said it could grant eternal life, turning men into beings untouched by death. But this search was not simple. Many alchemists spent their lives mixing, heating, and distilling, chasing a secret that always seemed just out of reach. Their writings were filled with puzzles, hidden meanings, and allegories, not only to guard their work from prying eyes, but also because they believed the truth could not be told in plain words. One had to seek, fail, and try again to understand it. Each explosion of a furnace, each cracked vessel was not just a mistake but a step in the journey, a lesson given by nature itself. In quiet monasteries, monks saw alchemy as a way to honor God, believing that by understanding creation they were learning the language of the Creator. In secret societies, alchemists passed knowledge carefully, testing the patience and wisdom of those who asked to join. And among ordinary people, the tales of alchemy spread like wildfire, stories of men who made rivers of gold, who healed the sick with glowing potions, who lived far longer than nature allowed. Some believed, others doubted, but all were curious. Thus, alchemy in the Middle Ages was more than a science, more than magic, and more than faith. It was all three woven together, a search for perfection, for eternal life, and for the deepest secrets of the world. Whether real or illusion, it shaped the dreams of generations, filling both kings and beggars with wonder at the thought that within the fire, the powders, and the prayers of an alchemist, the key to gold, immortality, and the mysteries of existence might one day be found. Warm welcome, audience. What's time there from where you're watching it? Now step with me deeper into the hidden room where the alchemist worked, a place that was as strange and mysterious as the art itself. The workshop of an alchemist in the Middle Ages was unlike any other room in a castle, a monastery, or a town. It was a space filled with both danger and wonder, where fire, smoke, and strange smells filled the air, where every corner seemed alive with secrets. Imagine a narrow chamber lit only by flickering candles and the glow of burning furnaces. The stone walls blackened with soot, the wooden shelves stacked high with glass jars, clay pots, and metal instruments. In those jars were powders of red, green, black, and shining silver dust, some made from crushed minerals, others from herbs dried and ground by careful hands. The air was heavy, with the biting scent of sulfur, the sharp tang of mercury, and the sweeter smell of plants like sage, rosemary, or thyme, mixed together in strange combinations that could both heal and harm. The table at the center of the room was covered in objects that would have looked magical to anyone who entered. long glass tubes bent into strange shapes, flasks sealed with wax-heavy books, filled with pages of drawings and codes, metal tangs and hammers. At the heart of the workshop burned the furnace, called the Athena, the eternal fire that kept heat steady for the experiments, glowing red and alive, like the beating heart of the room itself. But what happened inside this chamber was not only the mixing of powders or boiling of liquids. It was a ritual, a philosophy, a path to what the alchemists called the great work. To them, this great work was not just about making gold, but about transformation itself, about changing something simple and base into something higher and perfect. When an alchemist melted lead in a crucible, he did not only see dull grey metal, but an imperfect soul waiting to be lifted toward its golden state. Every stage of the process had deep meaning. The blackening of matter was a symbol of death and decay. The whitening represented purification, the yellowing showed rebirth, and the final reddening was perfection, the creation of gold. These stages were not only about the metals, but about the alchemist himself, for he believed his soul was walking the same path, being broken down, purified, tested, and finally transformed into something greater. The workshop was also filled with manuscripts, some copied by hand from older texts, others written by the alchemist himself in a secret code. These books were not written in plain language, but full of riddles, metaphors, and pictures of lions eating the sun, dragons devouring their tails, and birds rising from fire. Images that spoke in symbols only those who studied long and hard could begin to understand. An outsider would see nonsense or fairy tales, but the alchemist knew these were clues to the steps of his experiments. Many times he would spend hours not with fire or powders, but bent over these texts, trying to unlock what the old masters meant, comparing notes, and writing his own reflections in the margins. To the ordinary townsfolk, this room was terrifying. They whispered that the alchemist was calling on demons or speaking to spirits, that his jars and flames were signs of sorcery. Sometimes smoke would pour out of the windows, strange colors flashing in the night, and neighbors would cross themselves and whisper prayers to ward off evil. Yet those who were curious enough to enter often found not dark magic, but a man hard at work, his hands stained with powders, his eyes bright with the fire of obsession, his mind full of dreams of discovery. Some alchemists were poor and lived in simple cottages, their tools patched and cheap, while others worked under the patronage of kings or bishops in better rooms with expensive equipment. Yet in both cases the air of mystery was the same. The workshop was also a dangerous place. Explosions were common when mixtures boiled too quickly or vessels cracked under heat. Poisonous fumes filled the air, and many alchemists damaged their health by breathing mercury vapor or handling arsenic with bare hands. Some grew sick, others died young, and still others went mad from long hours of isolation and inhaling toxic smoke. But to the alchemist, these dangers were worth it, for the chance to find the Philosopher's Stone or the elixir of life was worth more than safety. They believed that to unlock nature's secrets, one had to give everything time, comfort, and sometimes even health. The alchemist's workshop was not only a laboratory, but also a chapel of sorts, a place where science and spirituality met. Every tool, every powder, every flame had both a physical use and a spiritual meaning. The furnace represented the fire of the divine, the glass vessels symbolized the fragile human body, and the metals were like souls waiting to be perfected. The alchemist prayed as much as he experimented, asking God to bless his work, to guide his hands, and to reveal the secrets hidden in creation. He did not see himself as a magician, but as a servant of truth, searching to understand the world as God had made it. And so, in the hidden rooms of castles, monasteries, and cottages, the great work continued. Day after day, year after year, many failed, their lives consumed by smoke and broken dreams, but still they tried. For the promise of gold and immortality was too great to abandon. To the outside world, the workshop was a place of danger and suspicion, but to the alchemist, it was the center of the universe, the doorway to eternity, and the place where the secrets of nature and the soul might one day be revealed. Gold in the Middle Ages was more than a shining metal. It was the very symbol of wealth, power, and divine perfection, and for the alchemists it became the heart of their restless search. In kingdoms torn by war and famine, where coins could buy soldiers and castles, where crowns and chalices glittered as marks of authority, gold was not just desired, it was worshipped. Kings and princes longed to fill their treasuries with it, merchants dreamed of trading it, and peasants hoped to glimpse it in churches where it decorated the altars and holy relics. To the alchemist, however, gold was not only treasure but the image of purity itself, the highest state of matter, the end of a great transformation. They believed that metals were alive in a hidden way, that they grew slowly in the womb of the earth, lead and copper being young and imperfect, while gold was the fully matured form, perfect and eternal, untarnished by time or corruption. To speed this hidden process, to help lead or tin reach its golden state, was the noble duty of the alchemist, and thus they devoted their lives to this quest. In smoky chambers, they melted lead until it bubbled like grey water. They mixed it with powders of sulfur and salts. They poured quicksilver into it, watching closely as colors shifted, as matter broke down and reformed. Sometimes the mixture turned black, other times it flashed red, and every change was studied like a divine message. Each failure was not truly a failure, but a step in the long path, for they believed the secret lay hidden deep, waiting for the patient and the faithful. Their texts spoke often of the philosopher's stone, the fabled substance that could turn any base metal into shining gold, and though no man ever truly found it, thousands sought it with unshakable hope. To them, the stone was both real and symbolic, real in the sense of a substance to be discovered, symbolic in that it represented perfection, the moment when impurity was forever transformed. The dream of endless gold brought both glory and danger to alchemists. Some gained the favor of rulers who promised them riches if they could deliver results, giving them laboratories, guards, and money to buy materials. But this favor was sharp-edged, for kings were impatient and greedy, and when the alchemist failed, suspicion turned to anger. Some were thrown into dungeons, accused of fraud or witchcraft, while others fled in secret, carrying their scrolls and secrets with them. Yet for every failure, new alchemists rose, drawn by the same dream, believing they might succeed where others had not. Gold was also linked to religion in the medieval mind. In churches, golden chalices and crosses shone as symbols of God's glory, untarnished and eternal. Alchemists saw their work as holy, for in creating gold they believed they were imitating the divine act of creation itself. The transformation of lead to gold mirrored the transformation of the soul from sin to purity, from imperfection to perfection. Thus, their search for gold was never only for wealth, but also for spiritual truth, a way to understand God's hidden laws. Many prayed before their furnaces, asking for guidance, believing that their work was a form of devotion, that every spark and every drop of molten metal was part of a sacred journey. But the pursuit of gold also attracted fraud. Some pretended to be alchemists, tricking rulers and merchants with clever illusions, showing them false transmutations by slipping gold powder into their mixtures or by coating lead with thin layers of gold. These deceivers gave true alchemists a bad name, for when their lies were revealed, all alchemy was accused of being nothing more than trickery. Yet the real seekers pressed on, unwilling to abandon the dream, convinced that beneath all the failures, beneath all the frauds, the truth still waited. And so, the quest for gold filled the Middle Ages with stories, tales of alchemists who claimed to have turned iron into treasure, of kings who kept alchemists locked in towers, of poor scholars who gave their last coin for a chance at the secret. The workshop became a battlefield of patience and hope, of failure and belief, where men risked everything for the chance to hold in their hands the shining perfection of gold. Whether for wealth, for knowledge, or for faith, the quest drove them onward, shaping their lives, their writings, and their legacy, leaving behind not gold itself, but the spirit of pursuit that would inspire generations to come. While the search for gold burned in the heart of the alchemist, there was another dream, even greater, a dream that promised not just wealth, but victory over death itself, and this dream was the quest for the elixir of life. In the Middle Ages, death was never far from anyone's door. Plague swept across the land, wars left villages in ruins. Hunger stalked the poor, and even the wealthy who dined from golden plates could be struck down suddenly by fever or accident. In this uncertain world, The idea of a potion that could heal all illness and stretch life beyond its natural limits was a promise so powerful that it captured the imagination of kings, peasants, and priests alike. The elixir of life was spoken of in whispers, a glowing liquid that could renew youth, strengthen the body, and perhaps even make a man immortal, freeing him from the grip of time. In the alchemist's workshop, this search was as serious as the quest for gold. They believed that just as metals could be purified and perfected, so too could the human body. To them, sickness was a sign of imperfection, of imbalance between the elements of fire, water, air, and earth that made up the body, and through alchemy this balance could be restored. By distilling herbs, minerals, and even precious stones, they hoped to draw out a hidden essence, a liquid that carried the life force itself. Some believed the elixir was simply another form of the Philosopher's Stone, a liquid version of that same mysterious substance, capable not only of transforming lead into gold, but of transforming the frail body of man into something eternal. The recipes for the elixir varied from manuscript to manuscript. Some spoke of boiling gold itself into a drinkable form, believing that since gold was perfect and incorruptible, it could share that perfection with the human body. Others insisted that rare plants found only in distant lands carried the secret essence of life, and so alchemists hunted for strange roots, glowing mushrooms, and herbs whispered about in old texts. Still others believed that the elixir could only be made through years of distillation, heating and cooling the same liquid over and over, until its true essence was freed from all impurities. It was said that the elixir would shine like liquid sunlight, that a single drop on the tongue could cure fevers, heal wounds, and restore failing strength. The search for immortality was not just about the body, but also the soul. To many alchemists, the elixir of life was as much spiritual as physical. They believed that drinking it was not only about living longer, but about being purified, made holy, and brought closer to God. The idea of eternal life was not strange to them. It was already promised by the Church in heaven. But the thought that it might be touched here on earth through the art of alchemy was a temptation too powerful to ignore. Some monks who studied alchemy believed that their search for the elixir was a holy act, a way to overcome sin and death, while others outside the monasteries were accused of arrogance, of trying to steal the power of God. The pursuit of this glowing potion was not without danger. Some alchemists poisoned themselves in the process, drinking mixtures of mercury, lead, or arsenic in the hope that they had finally unlocked the secret. Others claimed successes that no one else could prove. Stories spread of travelers who had tasted a drop and lived for centuries, of old men who grew young again, of kings whose wounds closed overnight. But for every such tale, there were many who fell sick or died, showing how thin the line was between healing and poison. Yet the dream lived on. For as long as men feared death, they hoped for life. Rulers especially desired the elixir. Kings feared death more than anyone, for with their passing kingdoms often fell into chaos, and their power was lost. They welcomed alchemists into their courts, promising riches if only the potion could be found. Some legends tell of emperors who kept alchemists as prisoners, forcing them to work day and night, waiting for the vial of immortality. Others traveled far in search of sages said to hold the secret, sending ships and caravans to distant lands, hoping that the cure for death lay hidden in some faraway temple or cave. To the common people, the elixir of life became a story told by firelight, a tale of wonder and longing. They imagined a glowing cup that could make the sick walk again, that could save children from fever and free mothers from pain. For those who struggled daily against hunger and illness, the thought of such a potion was as magical as paradise itself. Whether they believed it real or not, it gave hope, and in a world filled with suffering, hope was as precious as gold. The elixir of life, whether real or imagined, was a mirror of humanity's oldest dream, to live without fear of death, to escape the limits of the body, to hold eternity in one's hands. The alchemists who chased it may never have found it, but their search filled the Middle Ages with stories, experiments, and lessons. Some left behind recipes written in codes, others tales of glowing liquids, others only silence. Yet together they created a legend that lived on, a vision of immortality that haunted both rich and poor. And though no true elixir was ever found, the dream itself became immortal, passed from one generation to the next, carried on by seekers who refused to believe that death must have the final word. The language of alchemy in the Middle Ages was never simple or direct. It was wrapped in symbols, riddles, and hidden meanings that only the patient and the initiated could begin to understand. Alchemists believed that the greatest truths of nature could not be written in plain words, for if such secrets fell into the wrong hands, they might be misused or mocked, and so they clothed their writings in mystery. In their books, one would not find instructions like those in ordinary crafts, but strange images and cryptic phrases. They wrote of lions devouring the sun, of dragons eating their own tails, of birds rising from flames, and of kings and queens joining in mystical marriage. To the untrained reader, these seemed like fairy tales or nonsense, but to the alchemist they carried precise meaning. The lion might represent sulfur, the sun gold, the dragon Mercury, the mystical marriage, the union of two substances. That would create something new. Every picture was a puzzle, every phrase a clue, and the alchemist who read them had to study deeply, comparing symbol with symbol, experiment with experiment, until at last some hidden truth revealed itself. The use of symbols also gave alchemy an air of holiness and secrecy, for many of these images carried spiritual weight. The Ouroboros, the serpent biting its tail, represented eternity, the endless cycle of death and rebirth. The phoenix, rising from ashes, was the symbol of transformation and immortality. The sun and moon together were often drawn to show the balance of opposites, male and female, hot and cold, sulfur and mercury in every sign. The alchemist saw not only chemistry, but also philosophy and faith. For them, the universe itself was written in symbols, and to read them correctly was to glimpse the handwriting of God. Because of this, alchemy was often accused of being more magic than science, more riddle than truth. Outsiders mocked the drawings and coded words, saying they proved that alchemists were dreamers or liars. Yet the secrecy had another purpose. Too, it protected the alchemist from danger. In a world where accusations of witchcraft could lead to trial and fire, it was safer to hide one's meaning, to mask dangerous ideas under allegory. An alchemist might describe a union of metals as a marriage feast or an explosion as the battle of two beasts, and only those trained in the art would know what he truly meant. Thus, their writings survived, passed from hand to hand, each generation of seekers trying to solve the puzzles left by the last. The symbols were not confined to books alone. In the workshops, alchemists carved them into the walls, painted them onto jars, or scratched them into the surfaces of their tools. These signs gave power and meaning to the objects, turning a simple vessel into a holy container, a furnace into a symbol of divine fire. Some even wore rings or pendants carved with symbols, believing they carried protection and wisdom. To live as an alchemist was to live in a world where nothing was ordinary, where every shape, color, and sound carried a hidden message waiting to be understood. To students who first entered the path of alchemy, the sea of symbols was overwhelming. They were told to study patiently, for the truth could not be rushed. A master might hand his apprentice a scroll filled with pictures of animals and stars, telling him to meditate on it for weeks before even touching the furnace. In this way, the apprentice learned not only the craft, but also the discipline of mind. For alchemy was as much about inner vision as it was about outer experiment. The secrecy of alchemy also created an aura of power around those who practiced it. To kings and nobles, the symbols made alchemy seem ancient and profound, connected to wisdom far older than the Middle Ages. To villagers, the coded drawings were proof that the alchemist dealt with forbidden forces. Yet to the alchemist himself, the symbols were a language, one that spoke of both matter and spirit, a language that he believed had been whispered down from ancient Egypt, from Greece, from Arabia, carried across centuries to his own hands. Thus, the world of alchemy was built not only of fire, metal, and smoke, but also of pictures and words, of hidden signs and secret codes. Through these, the alchemist protected his work, shared his wisdom, and clothed his failures in mystery. And though the symbols might confuse or deceive outsiders, they also gave alchemy its soul, reminding each seeker that truth was not simple, that wisdom was hidden beneath layers, and that to uncover it one must read not only the surface of words but the secret heart beneath. In this way, alchemy became a language of transformation where every symbol was a key, every picture a doorway, and every riddle a step on the path toward gold, immortality, and the divine science of nature itself. Alchemy in the Middle Ages did not exist in silence, hidden only in lonely cottages or dim monasteries. It often lived under the watchful eyes of kings, queens, and nobles who saw in it the promise of wealth, power, and eternal rule. For rulers, gold was the lifeblood of kingdoms, the coin that paid armies, built palaces, and bought loyalty, and immortality was the greatest treasure of all, for it promised endless reign. Thus, many alchemists found themselves drawn into the glittering courts of Europe, invited by kings who hoped their secrets would turn dreams into reality. In grand halls decorated with tapestries and shining armor, alchemists were asked to prove their skills, to turn lead into gold before the eyes of nobles, to mix potions that could cure fevers, or wounds, to whisper whether the philosopher's stone or the elixir of life might be close at hand. Some rulers treated alchemists as honored guests, giving them chambers, laboratories, and riches to support their work. They were offered protection, food, servants, and libraries full of rare manuscripts. For these rulers, the alchemist was not only a craftsman but a magician, a man who might make the impossible possible. Yet such patronage was never without risk, for kings grew impatient quickly, and their greed was dangerous. When the promised gold did not appear, or when the potions failed to heal, suspicion fell like a heavy shadow. An alchemist might be accused of fraud, of wasting treasure, or worse, of practicing forbidden sorcery. Some were thrown into prisons, some fled under the cover of night, carrying only their books and secrets, while others met grim fates on the scaffold or at the stake. Yet for every story of failure, there were tales of strange successes that kept rulers believing. Legends spread of alchemists who had shown glimpses of their power coins of lead, turned to shining yellow metal, liquids that healed wounds, powders that glowed in the dark. Whether these were real achievements or clever tricks, they were enough to keep the dream alive, enough to convince kings that the philosopher's stone was close. If only the alchemist were given more time, more gold, more freedom, and so. Many courts across Europe and beyond kept alchemists near, each ruler hoping to be the one who gained the secret first. This relationship between alchemists and rulers was complex. Some alchemists sincerely believed their art was a holy pursuit, meant to bring knowledge and transformation to mankind, and they struggled under the weight of greedy demands. Others saw patronage as an opportunity, a way to fund their experiments, and promised results they knew they might never deliver, simply to gain time and support. Still others were outright tricksters, skilled in sleight of hand, who dazzled kings with illusions and escaped with wealth before the truth was revealed. Together, these stories build the reputation of alchemy as something halfway between miracle and deceit, science and sorcery, knowledge and fraud. Beyond kings and nobles, even the church took interest. Some high priests condemned alchemy, calling it heresy, the attempt of man to steal God's secrets. But others supported it, believing that the search for perfection was a reflection of divine creation. Monks in monasteries quietly copied alchemical texts, studied herbs and minerals, and experimented with distillation, while bishops and abbots sometimes funded alchemists to create medicines, or to uncover the mysteries of matter. The line between blessing and curse was thin, and alchemists had to walk carefully, hiding their true intentions in symbols while promising their patrons the fruits of their labor. To the common people, news of alchemists at court added to the air of mystery. Stories spread of kings who kept wizards in their towers, of glowing fires that never went out, of powders that could heal or destroy. For peasants who lived in hunger and fear, these tales were both terrifying and hopeful. Terrifying, for they believed alchemists consorted with dark powers, but hopeful, for if the secrets of gold and life were real, perhaps one day they might benefit all. Yet in truth, the treasures of alchemy, whether real or imagined, mostly stayed in the hands of the powerful, tied to the ambitions of rulers who saw in it only their own gain. And so, the bond between alchemists and patrons shaped the fate of the art itself. Without the support of kings and nobles, many alchemists could never have afforded the rare minerals, the costly glassware, or the time to pursue their endless experiments. But with that support came the heavy chains of expectation. chains that could turn favor into wrath in a single day. Some alchemists thrived in these courts, gaining fame and wealth, their names remembered in legend. Others vanished in disgrace, leaving behind only broken vessels and whispered rumors, yet together. Their presence in palaces and kingdoms made alchemy more than a hidden art. It became a force that touched politics, religion, and the very dreams of rulers, ensuring that the search for gold, immortality, and the secrets of creation remained alive at the heart of medieval power. Far from the open halls of kings and the crowded markets of towns, the true heart of alchemy in the Middle Ages lay hidden behind heavy doors in rooms filled with smoke, strange smells, and the endless flicker of fire. The alchemist's laboratory was a world apart, a place where ordinary men dared not enter, for within its walls substances boiled, hissed, and changed form in ways that seemed unnatural. To step into such a chamber was to enter a space that felt both sacred and dangerous, half workshop and half temple, where every tool carried weight and every sound spoke of transformation. These laboratories were often small and dim, tucked into basements of castles, lonely towers, or even secret rooms in monasteries. The walls were lined with shelves that groaned under jars of powders, stones, dried herbs, and liquids of every shade, clear as glass, red as blood, black as pitch, and green as emerald. Each was carefully labeled, though only the alchemist and his apprentices could understand the strange names and coded signs. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur, vinegar, and burning wood, scents that clung to the clothes of those who worked within, marking them wherever they went. At the center of this hidden world stood the furnace, the heart of the alchemist's art. Its fire was constant, fed by coal or wood, carefully controlled to create the precise heat needed for transformation. Above it, flasks of glass and clay rested, their contents bubbling like cauldrons of magic. Tubes of copper and lead snaked across tables, connecting vessels in a maze of distillation where vapor turned back into liquid, carrying hidden essences from one container to another. Mortars and pestles lay ready for grinding, balances and scales for measuring, and crucibles for melting metals until they glowed like miniature suns. Every sound in the laboratory carried meaning. The soft hiss of steam escaping from a flask, the crackle of wood in the furnace, the faint clink of glass as an apprentice carefully moved a vessel, all were signs of progress, or warning of danger. An error could mean disaster, an explosion that shattered glass, a poisonous gas that filled the room, a fire that burned through years of work in minutes. Many alchemists bore scars on their hands and faces, proof of accidents in the pursuit of hidden truth, and their apprentices learned quickly that the art demanded respect, patience, and caution. But the laboratory was not only a place of danger, it was also a place of wonder. To watch a dull stone dissolve into glowing liquid, or to see colors shift and metals change form, was to witness what seemed like miracles. Apprentices often stood in awe, convinced they were watching the secret language of the universe unfold before their eyes. For the alchemist, each reaction was a step toward perfection, a hint of the great transformation that would one day turn base matter into gold, and mortal life into immortality. Yet secrecy surrounded every corner of the laboratory. Visitors were rarely allowed, and when they were, much was hidden. Certain jars were covered, notes were locked away, and symbols were scribbled instead of words. Knowledge was guarded jealously, for the wrong person might steal an idea or accuse the alchemist of witchcraft. Even apprentices were often kept in ignorance, given small tasks without being told their full purpose, left to guess at the mysteries their master pursued. Only after years of service and loyalty might they be trusted with true knowledge, and even then, secrets were passed down slowly like treasures that had to be earned. The laboratory was not simply a workshop, but a reflection of the alchemist's soul. Its order or chaos mirrored his mind, its fires his passion, its jars his patience, its symbols his faith. Many alchemists believed the work they did within these walls was not only about changing matter, but also about changing themselves. Just as metals were purified by fire, so too was the soul purified by struggle, failure, and persistence. Every experiment, whether it succeeded or failed, was part of a journey of transformation, and the laboratory became the stage upon which this sacred drama unfolded. In these secret spaces, unseen by the wider world, the true heart of alchemy burned, away from kings and crowds. The alchemist wrestled with nature itself, combining, breaking, and reshaping, always seeking the hidden key. And though most of their furnaces never produced the philosopher's stone, and most of their flasks never yielded the elixir of life, still the laboratories stood as monuments to human curiosity and hope, places where the dream of turning the impossible into the possible was kept alive by the glow of fire and the endless patience of those who sought the mysteries of gold, immortality, and the magic science of their age. Among all the dreams that drove the alchemists of the Middle Ages, none shone brighter or more tempting than the elixir of life, the legendary potion that promised to cure all sickness, heal every wound, and grant unending youth. If the philosopher's stone was the key to transforming metals, the elixir was the key to transforming man himself, turning frailty into strength and death into eternal life. It was the holy grail of the alchemist's quest, the golden drink of immortality whispered of in old myths and sacred texts, and in every laboratory across Europe and beyond. Some vessel of bubbling liquid held the secret hope that one day it would be discovered. The idea of the elixir was not born in the Middle Ages alone. Ancient tales from China spoke of potions brewed by Taoist sages that could grant everlasting life, while legends from India told of sacred waters that preserved gods and heroes. From Egypt came the myths of priests who sought the secrets of the soul, and from Greece, the stories of ambrosia and nectar, the divine food of the Olympian gods. These ideas drifted across centuries and lands, carried in manuscripts, in whispered teachings, in translations from Arabic to Latin, until they settled in the hearts of medieval alchemists, who believed that if matter could be perfected, so too could the human body. In their dim chambers, alchemists mixed herbs, minerals, and metals in search of this perfect medicine. They ground emeralds into powder, boiled gold in vinegar, distilled dew gathered at sunrise, and mixed it with rare spices brought from distant lands. Some believed that mercury held the secret, for it flowed like liquid silver and seemed alive, and they sought to purify it until it became the very essence of vitality. Others believed the elixir was hidden within the philosopher's stone itself, a byproduct of its perfection, and so every attempt to create the stone also carried the hope of producing the life-giving draught. Legends grew around these efforts. Some claimed that alchemists had succeeded, that secret potions had cured kings of deadly illnesses or allowed men to live far beyond their natural years. The stories of Nicolas Flamel, the French alchemist said to have found both the stone and the elixir, fed the imagination of generations in taverns and courts. Whispers spread that certain monks drank hidden waters that kept them strong, or that noblemen kept alchemists hidden away to brew the elixir in silence. Whether true or not, such tales only added to the mystery, making the search seem more urgent, more possible, more real. But alongside hope, there was danger. Many of the substances mixed into these potions were poisonous, and countless experiments ended not with health but with suffering. Mercury, arsenic, and antimony, though thought to hold power, often poisoned those who drank them, leaving the body weakened or even lifeless. Apprentices who sipped unfinished potions out of curiosity sometimes fell ill, and desperate nobles who demanded to taste the elixir often discovered too late that immortality could not be forced by impatience. The line between medicine and poison was thin, and alchemists themselves often risked their own lives, testing mixtures upon their bodies in the hope of tasting eternity. Yet despite the failures, the dream endured, for the elixir of life was never only about living forever. It was also about overcoming human weakness, about defeating disease, about rising above the decay that haunted every medieval household. In a world where plagues swept through towns, where wounds festered, and where even childbirth carried deadly risk, the promise of a drink that could heal all was more than fantasy, it was salvation. To imagine a world without sickness, where kings ruled for centuries, where loved ones never aged, where knowledge could grow without end, was to imagine heaven on earth. That vision gave alchemists the strength to continue, even when their experiments ended in smoke and ash. Philosophers, too, spoke of the elixir not only as a potion, but as a symbol. They argued that immortality was not merely the lengthening of life, but the perfection of the soul, that the true elixir was wisdom, purity, and harmony with the divine. to them. The quest for the potion was also a quest for spiritual transformation, for an inner immortality that no sickness or death could touch. In their writings they described the elixir in riddles, saying it was hidden in plain sight, present in every drop of water, every breath of air, every spark of fire waiting only for those with eyes to see and hands to shape. And so the elixir of life lived in both worlds, the material and the spiritual, the practical and the mystical. In smoky laboratories, alchemists boiled and distilled in hope of capturing it in liquid form. In books of philosophy, scholars described it as a truth already present in the soul. Between these two paths, the dream of immortality endured through the centuries, carried on by those who refused to accept the limits of life, whether found in a flask of golden liquid or in the transformation of the human spirit. The elixir remained a shining promise of alchemy, the ultimate goal that made every risk, every failure, and every scar worth bearing. For all the sincere seekers who filled their days and nights with fire, smoke, and endless patience. The world of alchemy was also crowded with pretenders, men who wore the cloak of the alchemist, but chased only quick profit and easy gain. In the Middle Ages, where kings and nobles longed for gold and immortality, and where peasants feared or admired those who claimed hidden power, there was fertile ground for fraud. Charlatans traveled from court to court, promising wonders they could never deliver, dazzling their patrons with tricks and vanishing with wealth before their deceit was discovered. Their presence gave alchemy a double face, one of noble search and one of cunning fraud. Some of these deceivers were skilled performers, able to fool even sharp eyes. They used powders that caused flames to change color, or cleverly hidden gold dust to make it seem as if lead had turned to treasure. In banquets and royal halls, they staged spectacles where metals changed before the eyes of astonished nobles, or where liquids fizzed and glowed like living light. These tricks, borrowed from natural chemistry or even stage magic, convinced many that true transformation had been achieved. Nobles showered these impostors with gifts, land, and titles, desperate to keep the secret for themselves. But when the charlatan slipped away in the night, leaving only empty flasks and disappointed hopes, suspicion fell not only on him, but on all who carried the name of alchemist. Others preyed on the desperate poor, wandering through towns with promises of healing potions and magical cures. They sold mixtures of herbs, wine, and metals, claiming them to be the elixir of life or waters of health, while in truth, they were little more than strong drink or dangerous poison. The sick who trusted them often grew worse, and the reputation of alchemy suffered under the weight of their falsehoods. Yet such frauds continued, for the hunger for miracle medicine was endless, and men were willing to risk much for a chance of relief. Not all deceivers began as liars. Some were true alchemists who, after years of failure, lost patience and turned to trickery. Pressured by patrons, threatened by kings who demanded results, or tempted by wealth, they produced false gold by melting coins into their crucibles or secretly slipping precious metal into their experiments. At first, it was a way to buy time to keep their work alive. But once discovered, the punishment was harsh. Tales spread of alchemists thrown into prison, chained in dungeons, or burned as heretics, not only for failure but for deception. Thus, many honest alchemists feared being mistaken for charlatans, for the line between hope and fraud was thin, and one failed experiment could turn admiration into accusation. The church, too, grew suspicious. Priests warned that false alchemists were little better than sorcerers, leading men astray with promises of wealth and life that belonged only to God. Preachers thundered against those who claimed to master creation, calling them deceivers who tempted the pride of men. In towns and cities, mobs sometimes rose against alchemists, burning their homes and books, convinced that fraud and witchcraft walked hand in hand. Yet still, alchemy endured, for the dream was stronger than fear, and not even the cries of fraud could extinguish the hunger for gold and immortality. In this way, alchemy carried within it both light and shadow. On one side were the true seekers, who labored honestly with fire and patience, chasing not riches but wisdom. On the other were the pretenders, who used deception to gain quick reward, leaving ruin in their wake. The presence of charlatans cast doubt upon the whole art, making rulers wary and peasants fearful, yet also spreading its fame. For even the false promises of gold and eternal life kept the idea alive, planting it in the minds of kings and beggars alike. And in the end, though fraud stained its reputation, it also ensured that alchemy remained part of every conversation, a mysterious art that might at any moment prove real. Thus, the story of alchemy in the Middle Ages was not only about furnaces and experiments, not only about philosophy and transformation, but also about the human hunger for wonder, and the lengths to which some would go to feed that hunger. It was a story of truth and lies, of honest pursuit and cunning deceit, of noble seekers and shameless pretenders. And it was this mixture, this blend of faith and fraud, that made alchemy both admired and feared, a craft balanced always between the promise of light and the shadow of deception. Though the chronicles of alchemy often speak of learned men in monasteries or scholars in courts, the truth is that women, too, played a quiet yet powerful role in the story of this mysterious art during the Middle Ages. Their names were rarely written in books, their faces seldom painted in manuscripts. Yet behind the walls of homes, convents, and workshops, many women practiced alchemical arts, often blending them with the knowledge of healing, herbs, and household crafts. To dismiss their role is to forget half of the story, for without them, alchemy would not have carried the richness and depth it gained across centuries. Some women entered the path of alchemy through healing. In a world where sickness was constant and physicians were few, women became keepers of herbal wisdom, gathering plants, boiling roots, and distilling oils. These practices often overlapped with alchemy, for both sought transformation, the turning of herbs into medicine, the drawing out of hidden essences from the natural world. In convents, nuns experimented with distillation, creating tinctures and ointments to ease pain and cure wounds. Their workshops echoing the laboratories of men, recipes for healing potions and perfumes, written in careful hands, were often handed down through generations of women, and though cloaked in the language of the household, they carried the spirit of alchemy within them. There were also women who dared to take the role of full alchemists, studying symbols, working with furnaces and seeking the mysteries of the Philosopher's Stone. Though barred from universities and often excluded from guilds, they found ways to learn through family, secret manuscripts, or by serving as assistants to alchemist husbands and fathers. Some became masters in their own right, though society rarely acknowledged them. Legends whisper of women who discovered hidden elixirs, who wrote manuscripts under false names, or who guided entire generations of seekers with their secret wisdom. One such figure remembered through fragments is Maria the Jewess, an ancient alchemist whose teachings were copied and studied in the Middle Ages. Though she lived centuries before, medieval women saw in her an example of what was possible. Her inventions, such as distillation devices and the Balneum Maria, a water bath still used in chemistry today, as the Bain Marie showed that a woman could create tools that transformed not only substances, but also the course of science itself. Inspired by such names, countless unnamed women kept alive the spark of alchemy in kitchens, gardens, and cloisters. Yet, their path was not free of danger. Women who practiced alchemy, especially outside convent walls, often risked being called witches. A jar of strange powder, a bubbling mixture over a fire, or even a simple healing potion could be enough to draw suspicion. Neighbors whispered, priests accused, and more than one woman found herself condemned not because of evil, but because her knowledge was too strange, too close to the mysteries forbidden to ordinary folk. Thus many worked in silence, hiding their books and tools, passing their knowledge in whispers from mother to daughter, disguising their alchemy as simple household skill. Despite the dangers, women brought to alchemy something vital, a closeness to the rhythms of daily life. Where some alchemists chased only the grandeur of gold and immortality, women often sought practical transformation medicines that saved lives, perfumes that delighted senses, balms that brought comfort, dyes that brightened cloth. In these acts, they showed that alchemy was not only about kings and treasures, but also about the quiet, humble pursuit of making life better. Their contributions blurred the line between science and craft, between philosophy and practice, reminding the world that the art of transformation touched every corner of existence. And though history may have forgotten most of their names, Their presence lingers in the manuscripts where anonymous hands recorded recipes, in the healing traditions that survived across generations, and in the very tools still used today in laboratories. They were the hidden hands of alchemy, shaping its course quietly, invisibly, yet with power. For in the end, alchemy was never only the story of men in smoky towers. It was also the story of women at hearth and altar, turning nature into medicine, mystery into wisdom, and silence into a legacy that endured long after their voices were gone. Among all the mysteries that wrapped alchemy in fire, smoke, and secrecy, none was greater than the dream of the Philosopher's Stone. To the medieval alchemist, this was not just a stone of ordinary earth or metal, but the ultimate key to perfection, a substance that could turn base metals like lead or iron into gold, and perhaps even hold within it the power to grant immortality itself. More than a material, it was an idea, a symbol of the transformation of the imperfect into the perfect, of darkness into light, of the mortal into the divine. For centuries, the stone shone at the heart of every alchemist's furnace, the gold that justified endless experiments, failures, and hopes. Descriptions of the stone were as varied as the men who sought it. Some claimed it was a powder of brilliant red, glowing like fire even in the dark. Others said it was a stone of golden hue, heavy and pure, or a crystal that shimmered with every color of the rainbow. To many, it was not even a physical thing, but in essence a hidden perfection locked within matter, waiting for the skilled alchemist to draw it forth. The writings of past masters filled with riddles only deepened the mystery. They spoke of dragons and lions, of marriages of sun and moon, of death and rebirth, all symbols pointing toward the hidden process of creating the stone. To the uninitiated, these words sounded like nonsense, but to the alchemist they were maps of the great work, the opus magnum, that would end in the stone. The search for the Philosopher's Stone consumed countless lives. In secret chambers, alchemists labored day and night, their furnaces burning without rest, their tables cluttered with flasks, powders, and strange metals. Years turned into decades as they pursued the great work, each failure only deepening their belief that success must be close. Some believed the process required endless purification, breaking down metals, purging them of impurities, combining them again and again until at last they reached perfection. Others believed that nature itself must be imitated, that the stone could be made only by recreating the secret processes by which the earth formed gold in its hidden veins. Still others believed prayer, meditation, and purity of soul were as important as fire and metal, for only a heart cleansed of greed could guide the transformation to its end. Legends spread of those who had succeeded. In the taverns and courts of Europe, people spoke of Nicholas Flamel, a scribe of Paris, who was said to have found the secret of the stone after studying mysterious manuscripts. They claimed he and his wife lived for centuries, passing down their wisdom in silence, their house visited by seekers who hoped to learn the truth. In other tales, Arab masters were said to have discovered the stone long before, passing its secrets to chosen disciples. Whether these were truth or myth, they gave alchemists hope, proving that the dream was not impossible but hidden, waiting to be found by those patient enough to seek it. Yet alongside the legends came shadows. Kings demanded the stone from those who claimed to know its secrets, imprisoning or torturing alchemists in hopes of forcing them to reveal it. Fraudsters used the name of the stone to trick patrons, claiming they could produce it, only to flee with their rewards. The church looked with suspicion, fearing that the promise of transforming matter and defying death was an act of pride, a sin against divine order. Thus, the Philosopher's Stone remained forever out of reach, both desired and feared, both pursued and condemned. But the deeper truth of the stone was that it was never only about gold or immortality. To the alchemist, it was also the symbol of inner transformation. Just as base metals could be purified into perfection, so too could the human soul be refined through wisdom, discipline, and faith. The great work of alchemy was as much about the spirit as about matter, and the stone was the image of ultimate harmony, when the inner and outer worlds would both be perfected. In this sense, even those who never held the stone still claimed to find it in themselves, in the clarity of mind, in the purity of heart, in the vision of a universe bound together by hidden laws. Thus, the Philosopher's Stone remained the heart of alchemy, the eternal dream that gave meaning to every experiment, every scar, and every page of symbols. Whether real or imagined, it kept the furnaces burning and the seekers dreaming. It was the promise that behind the smoke and the riddles, behind the failures and dangers, there lay perfection itself, a perfection that could change not only metal but man, not only life but the very soul. As the Middle Ages drew slowly into the dawn of the Renaissance, the echoes of alchemy did not fade into silence but instead transformed, carrying its secrets into the future. Though mocked by some, hunted by others, and misunderstood by many, alchemy left behind a trail of ideas, symbols, and discoveries that shaped the very foundations of science. The dream of gold and immortality may have been its most dazzling face, but its true gift was deeper, a vision of nature as alive, mysterious, and full of hidden possibilities. For centuries men and women had bent over furnaces, poured powders, and studied stars in search of the Philosopher's Stone. And while most never found what they sought, their experiments brought forth new knowledge, tools, and ways of thinking that would change the world forever. The alchemist's laboratory, with its jars, flames, and distillation devices, slowly became the birthplace of chemistry. Every attempt to purify a metal, to separate one substance from another, to capture vapors and transform them into liquids, was a step toward the methods that later scientists would refine. Without knowing it, the alchemists had laid the groundwork for modern laboratories. Their mystical drawings of suns, moons, dragons, and serpents may seem strange to us now, but hidden beneath them were real processes of heating, dissolving, and crystallizing processes that would one day be freed from secrecy and become the language of chemistry and medicine. Yet alchemy was never just science. It was also philosophy, spirituality, and imagination woven together. For those who pursued it, the transformation of metals was always tied to the transformation of the self. The furnace was not only a place where matter was purified, but also a mirror of the human soul, where suffering, patience, and discipline could burn away impurities and reveal inner light. This union of the material and the spiritual, of earth and heaven, gave alchemy its unique character, making it more than a mere forerunner of science. It was a way of seeing the world as one vast system of connections where every stone, every plant, every star was linked by hidden threads. Even as the Renaissance and the Enlightenment brought new ways of thinking, the image of alchemy did not vanish. Some continued to pursue it in secret, hoping that the stone or the elixir might still be within reach. Others preserved its symbols in art, literature, and esoteric traditions, where alchemy became a language for speaking of hidden truths, of the soul's journey toward perfection. Great minds like Isaac Newton studied alchemical texts alongside mathematics and physics, showing that even the most rational thinkers were drawn to its mysteries. But perhaps the greatest legacy of alchemy was the idea of possibility. It told a story that matter could be changed, that nothing was fixed forever, that the humble could be raised to greatness, that even death itself might not be the end. In a world often bound by poverty, disease, and fear, this vision gave hope, to believe that lead could become gold, that life could be renewed. That knowledge could unlock the deepest secrets of creation. Such dreams kept the human spirit alive. Through centuries of darkness, as time passed, science claimed the tools, while alchemy drifted into myth. Yet the two remain, forever linked, for without the alchemist's dream, the chemists might never have been born. And beyond science, the symbols of alchemy continue to inspire, reminding us that transformation is possible, both in matter and in ourselves. The Philosopher's Stone may never have been found in any furnace, but in the quest for it, humanity discovered something even greater, the courage to imagine, to experiment, and to believe in change. Thus, the story of alchemy in the Middle Ages ends not with failure, but with legacy. Gold was rarely made, immortality was never gained, but the fire of curiosity burned brightly in every smoky chamber, in every mysterious manuscript, in every whispered legend of a hidden stone. Alchemy carried the promise of transformation, and though the Middle Ages are long gone, that promise still lives on in our sciences, in our philosophies, and in the eternal human desire to turn darkness into light, ignorance into wisdom, and the ordinary into the extraordinary.